Welcome to this video on solving proportions. Let's begin. Here we have example 1. We have 20 over 6 equals x over 9. In order to solve a proportion, all we need to do is cross multiply and solve. Cross multiplying means I multiply 6 by x and I multiply 20 by 9. Let's see what that gets us. 6 times x equals 20 times 9. So we have 6x equals 180. We can then solve this just like any other linear equation by dividing both sides by 6, and we get x is equal to 30. So again, remember the important steps of solving a proportion are to cross multiply and then use your previous knowledge of solving equations to solve for the variable. Let's do another example. Here we have n minus 10 over 8 equals 3. Now one thing you might notice is that 3 is not a fraction. How can we fix this so that we can use proportions to cross multiply? A simple fix is to write it as 3 over 1. So we have n minus 10 quantity over 8 equals 3 over 1. So now I can cross multiply. I have 3 times 8. 3 times 8 is 24. And then we have 1 times n minus 10, which is just n minus 10. So we have 24 equals n minus 10. To solve this, we can add 10 to both sides of the equation, and we get n is equal to 34. Let's do another example. Again, we're going to cross multiply and solve. So we have 5 times the quantity x plus 2 equals x times 9. Make sure you use parentheses to group x plus 2 together. So we have 5 times the quantity x plus 2 is equal to x times 9. We need to distribute here, so we get 5x plus 10 is equal to 9x. Remember, when we solve, we need to get all of our variables onto one side. We will accomplish this by subtracting 5x from both sides. If instead of doing that, you wanted to subtract 9x from both sides, you could do that. It's just going to take you an extra step. Okay, so 9x minus 5x is 4x. Then I can divide both sides by 4, and we find that x is equal to 10/4. Now, this is a fraction, which is fine, but we can reduce it by dividing both top and bottom by 2. So our final answer is x is equal to 5 halves, or if you want to write it as a decimal, you could also write it as 2.5. Okay, be careful about decimals though, because sometimes they cannot be, the exact answer can't be expressed as a decimal, such as when we're dividing by 3. Okay, I just want to take a minute real quick and show you what would happen if instead of subtracting 5x from both sides, we had subtracted 9x from both sides. If you don't want to see it, just skip over this and move right on to example 4. So let's say I had subtracted 9x from both sides. 5x minus 9x is negative 4x. But then I get negative 4x plus 10 is equal to 0. Okay? This is where some people will make mistakes and they say negative 4x is equal to 10. That is not true. Negative 4x and positive 10 are still on the same side of the equation. So then here I'd have to do an extra step. So then I have 10 is equal to 4x, and then I'm right back here. So be careful of that. That's why I always draw this vertical line down the middle, so that I keep the left side and the right side of my equation separate, and I don't fall into the trap of accidentally writing 4x equals 10, when in fact the truth is that it's 4x plus 10 is equal to 0. So be very careful with that. Okay, example 4. So we, again, are going to just cross multiply and solve. So we're going to have 2 times 3, and then we're going to have p plus 4 times p plus 5. So let's see, we have 2 times 3 equals, parentheses, p plus 4, parentheses, p plus 5. Make sure you use those grouping symbols, or else you're probably not going to get the right answer. Okay, so we're going to FOIL. So we have p squared plus 5p plus 4p plus 20. Okay, so the way we solve, this is actually a quadratic, right? This is a, because you have a p squared, you have a quadratic term, not just a linear term. So the way we need to solve this is a little bit different. So the first thing I'm going to do is the most obvious thing, which is to combine my like terms. Okay, so the next thing I have to do, normally, right, if I go back to some of these previous examples, right, I was just trying to get my variable on one side and everything else on the other side. That was my MO if I have a linear equation, right, if I just have whatever variable raised to the first power. Okay, when I have a variable raised to the second power, my goal is a little bit different. Okay, so instead of just trying to get the variable on one side and everything else on the other, my new goal is to get 0 on one side. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I want to apply the zero product property. Okay, and I can't apply the zero product property if I don't have 0. Kind of makes sense, right? So how can we get 0 on one side? Well, the easiest thing to do at this point, right, is just to subtract 6 from both sides. So let's see what happens when we do that. We get 0 equals p squared plus 9p, that's a 9, sorry about that, plus 14. Okay, so once I get 0 on one side, then I can use my general factoring strategy to factor this polynomial. Okay, so this actually factors out as p plus 7 times the quantity p plus 2. Again, go back and watch those videos if you don't remember how to do that. So we have two possible solutions. Either p plus 7 is equal to 0 or p plus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve both of these. Okay, so we have p is equal to negative 7 or p is equal to negative 2. Okay, so these are our final answers. You can write it just like that, or you could write it as p is equal to negative 7 comma negative 2. The only other thing I would think about or worry about is to think about your restricted values. Remember, we can't divide by 0. So we need to make sure, right, if p plus 4 is in the denominator, we need to make sure that we are not dividing by 0. So the only restricted value that I would worry about here is negative 4. Okay, negative 7 and negative 2, neither of these two values are the restricted value, so we don't need to mention that negative 4 is a restricted value. We just check ourselves, make sure that neither of our values is going to cause us to divide by 0, and we're good. All right, how about example 5? So again, we are going to cross multiply and solve. By the way, if I haven't mentioned it, a good way to watch these videos is to, especially after I've done one or two examples, is to pause the video, try to do the next example all by yourself, and then, unpause it and see if you're right. You can even, fast forward the video or scroll through till the end, so you don't have to watch me solve the whole thing in case you've already caught on and you know what you're doing. You can save a lot of time that way. Okay, so we have parentheses v minus 5, right? The quantity of v minus 5 times 9, and then the quantity of v plus 6 times 4. Okay, so of course we're going to do the distributive property. 9v minus 45 equals 4v plus 24. Okay, this time we're back to a linear equation. We do not have any squared terms, so we can do what we normally do, which is to get all the variables on one side and everything else on the other side. I myself personally like to do that so that if I can, the coefficient of my variable stays positive. So I'm going to subtract 4v from both sides. Then I'm going to add 45 to both sides, it looks like. So it looks like we have 5v is equal to 69. It's an equal sign there. That's not a very nice number, but that's okay. We can just divide by 5. 69, I believe, is prime. Well, it's not prime, but it's just not divisible by 5. So it cannot be reduced, is my point. So I'm just going to leave it as 69 over 5.